Hello everyone, welcome to the Week in Nintendo Land, where we chat about all the biggest things happening in the world of Nintendo. I'm Alex Bolwood, and we have a divine beast of an episode this week because we're going to be talking about all things Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. And we've got the greatest champions in the land here to give you their thoughts. It's a triple threat, a triforce, if you will. First up, we've got our co-hosts Anna and Nathan.
Hello.
And we have our resident Age of Calamity oracle, Jhonathan Carneiro. Jhonathan, how are you? I can see you're already bursting to talk about this game.
Yes, I can't wait. Let's talk about the game of the year right now, won't we?
Yes. Well, talking about game of the year, the game was out on Friday, and our very own Sean Hughes reviewed the game for us over at switchplayer.net, and he gave it 4.5 out of 5, saying it was a game of the year contender. So I'll leave a link in the descriptions if you want to read the full review. But I know we're all very excited to talk about this game. I can feel the hype in the air. We're going to remain spoiler-free, though, just in case anyone listening hasn't played it yet. We're past the demo. We're going to talk about the demo and what transpires in the demo. But let's just talk about the game. Has everyone played it, and what is everyone's initial impressions?
I've played the demo. I actually haven't got my hands on the game. I'm probably going to just end up purchasing it next year and trying to stay away from like bigger spoilers than whatever. We learn a lot in the demo, as we're going to talk about later. But I figure with that much knowledge, I can just try to keep to myself with that and hold off because there's a lot of other things I've been buying. But it's amazing so far. I love what I've seen.
I pre-ordered it actually just to get the lucky ladle. So I've got the big spoon.
I was tempted by that. I won't lie.
I was always going to pre-order it digitally. So when that came up, I was like, all right, okay, yeah, I guess a spoon is great.
Why not?
But I've been playing it for a little bit this weekend. I have got through a few missions. So I was about to outline exactly what happens. I won't do that exactly. But I've got through a few missions, and so far pleasantly surprised, and I'm more impressed than I was from the demo. I think the demo undersold it a little bit for me, and it kept me at a consistent level. But the actual game, I'm much more impressed with, and I'm super excited to finish it now. I'm really, really excited to get back in.
And Jhonathan, how about you? Are you deep into it?
Yeah, I think I have played too much of it already, considering it was out on Friday. Because from the demo itself, I've played the demo for 5 hours, I think, because I played all the first levels on all the difficult settings, because I'm that kind of person. And then I'm into 20 hours into the main game. I'm on the chapter 5.
Okay, you're really far
wow,
into it.
you've really been playing.
We have recently finished Ninja Fresh 2, and that went to print, and it will be out soon for the people who was kind enough to help us on Kickstarter. So, and Age of Calamity came at the right time for me, like, okay, now I have some time to free myself, and I will just be the dumb person who will play for 5 hours straight with no shame of myself.
It was perfectly timed for the Ninty Fresh team to be able to like get the magazine out and just Age of Calamity it up.
Yeah, it's your reward. It's your reward for all that hard work you get to play Age of Calamity.
Yeah, kind of that.
It's my first Muso game, so I've never played like a Hyrule Warriors or Dynasty Warriors game before. And I was kind of, I remember previous episodes, everyone kind of talking about Age of Calamity. I was like, is it my game? I'm not quite sure if it's my cup of tea. But I played the demo and absolutely loved it. Couldn't get enough of it, and just kind of like played it so much that I was like, oh my god, I love this game. I can't wait to play it. So it's just, I'm glad they released the demo, because otherwise maybe I would have left it a couple more months to pick it up, maybe after Christmas.
Yeah.
But after playing the demo, I was just like, I have to buy it. I have to play more of this.
I think like it undersells it to sell it as a Muso game, because much as those games are fantastic in their own right, this is so much more involved, and there's so many more intricacies and the differences between the characters. When I hear criticisms of the Dynasty Warriors games as a bit mindless, I have played them and I will agree. They are absolute comfort food. You sit there, you kind of tune out,
Yeah.
and it's brilliant. But I think this one, I'm so happy they did a demo because they have stepped up so much from the original Hyrule Warriors. That gave them enough confidence and enough, shine in Nintendo's eye to be given the keys to something incredible. And I'm so happy they built on a solid framework with an actual Zelda story to make this. I know we've talked about it so much about how this feels like lightning in a bottle in terms of Nintendo actually handing out their IP to a company that seems to be suited to this story, but it feels so good that this story got made this way, and I'm so happy people are actually enjoying it and not just looking at it as a Warriors game.
I mean, because it's not just a Warriors game. I mean, it's a Warriors game, but it's very the Zelda elements are very infused in it. It's not it doesn't feel like kind of thrown in for the sake of it. It's integrated. And I think I really appreciate that. What were you going to say, John?
Yeah, I'd say that this time it's not a Warriors game with a Zelda skin. Like the first Hyrule Warriors was a bit like that. But now you have so many elements from the Zelda series, and specifically from Breath of the Wild, and these elements are everywhere. It's from the art style to the map layout, to the characters, the combat, even the elements that work together, that have physics and fire and lightning and ice, and how all these elements work together to create a much more complex combat system that has much more depth than other Hyrule Warriors, the other Hyrule Warrior or other Warriors games, other Musous. There's not the combat. You can do so much stuff in order to open up your enemies' weak points this time. On the first Hyrule Warriors, you were a lot of reactive battling, because you were always waiting from the enemies to start a certain attack pattern that would open to a certain item that you would use to open their weak point. But now you have everything at your disposal. You can use the elemental rods, you can use the Shike Slate powers at any time, and each character has its own unique special effect or superpower or elemental power that you can mix between your combos and between your attacks.
Yeah, you said there as well. Like, I think it feels like a really faithful kind of a game to Breath of the Wild. It's almost as if Nintendo made it themselves. It's that faithful. It kind of carries along everything. And I love being back in that world again, because I haven't played Breath of the Wild since like 2017 when it first came out, and all this nostalgia like suddenly just came rushing back. All the even the sound effects and stuff from the cooking, it's all there. There's nothing kind of out of place, which is it's such a faithful recreation of that world.
Yeah. I just went to Gerudo Town to try and find Urbosa, and that is one of the most large maps in terms of it almost is just a recreation of Gerudo Town. Like, obviously they've changed maybe the scale of it, and as I was looking at the objectives, I was like, I wonder if I can do this. And I went up the staircase and I went up into the room above the throne room, and I found a Korok and a treasure chest, and I was like, this is just a Zelda game. You've sold me a Zelda game.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Well, and you would hope for that, because this is a game that if you are a fan of the Zelda series, you really want to play this game. It's even begrudgingly, if you're not sure about playing a hack and slash and you're more into Zelda for the story and the puzzles and you're not really into the fighting, you probably still want to play this, because you probably were already tempted because it's a prequel to Breath of the Wild. And what we're saying is, if you haven't considered it because of the nature of the game, maybe you should, because the gameplay itself caters to Zelda fans in that way. There's still discovery, there's still a lot of things that Zelda fans love, but it is it's a completely different game play. Like it is a hack and slash, but it's integrated well. I don't know how else to say it, except it doesn't feel out of place. I feel like it could have easily just been like, oh, and by the way, it's just a regular Warriors game, except you find Koroks here and there or something. It could have easily just been a reskin. Yeah. But they made it special, and I feel like it needed to be because it's a must story-wise for Zelda fans.
I think it's very obvious that Koei Tecmo just love Zelda and took this very seriously. I think the difference between the original Hyrule Warriors and this one, you're right, is that like the original Hyrule Warriors, it wasn't, I won't use the word mindless repeatedly, but some people worried, and I would agree to an extent, that it's not engaging. Unless you really up the difficulty, I don't think they're very engaging games, whereas this is demanding, it is engaging, and that does come from the difference in characters, the difference in abilities, and the fact that you have to pay attention to enemy weak points. Like there's just so many different things that you have to be paying attention to but feel good to do. Right. Like I shared a video yesterday of like I was using Link's attacks, I was chaining them, then I used the remote bomb, I used the arrows, I wall jumped off different Cryonis beams, then used an enemy weak point thing, and I just watched the video back and I was like, this is so good. I had so much fun doing this, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't like XXX. Like I really had to pay attention to what I was doing. Yeah. It came from me, you know, learning. I mean, it does telegraph a lot of the time exactly what move an enemy needs, but I think it works. I think in terms of how quick it is, that's not a cheat. I think that is just like, quick, do this. And you're like, oh God. And it pays for you to be paying attention.
Yeah, it's like a quick time event sort of. And it does, although hack and slashing does work, you're rewarded for what you just said, for thinking about what you're doing, just like in Breath of the Wild. Yeah, you can just run in and fight all the bokoblins, or you could think about how you're doing it and bomb them at just the right time and pay attention to where the, you know, explosive barrels are and things like that. You know, so it goes. It's the same way in a Zelda game, and it's the same way here. So it's rewarding to be creative.
Yeah, I found the combat really, really satisfying. I just really enjoyed it. I kind of had this perception of like this game. I thought it was going to be really hard to play at the start. I thought it was going to be really obtrusive, and yeah, I'd just die straight away. But it just felt so satisfying, so much fun to kind of run into like a horde of enemies. And you do feel like a god. You kind of like swinging as Link, swinging sort of around, doing all these crazy moves, and it feels incredible. And I'd say maybe the combat's slightly better than Breath of the Wild. I really enjoy that. Yeah. So
it depends. I was literally today just trying to talk someone into playing Breath of the Wild for the first time. Never played it.
Wow.
And I was telling them how great the combat is in Breath of the Wild. So that's why I'm saying, I don't know, because Breath of the Wild it's almost apples and oranges. You know, I don't know if it's even an argument you can make because it's so different. Breath of the Wild is sort of like very deliberate, and it's slower paced, and you have to think about every single I don't know. I guess they're comparable, but they are sort of apples and oranges in my eyes. And by the way, Alex, when you say God mode, I'm thinking about Impa. I'm playing as like 12 Impas and running around. That's when I feel like God. Anyway,
when I started with Link, I was like, yeah, this is pretty easy to get the hang of. You know, I'm swinging my sword. This is cool. I can do like a strong attack. You know, and then suddenly when I was Impa, I was like, I do not know what I'm doing here. It's all gone crazy.
What's a symbol? What?
And that's the thing about the Age of Calamity, because at a first glance, it's too much of a fantasy power, where you are these incredible champions who can defeat thousands of enemies and all of that. But then the game slowly adds more complexity with different enemies, and then the map layouts and the different objectives you have on each map. Because after all, every Warriors game, there's that combat that can be simple, but it's also a game about the map control, because you are always trying to get the outposts, and then you need to defend, and then the battlefield is always changing with new enemies and new victory conditions and new things that you need to pay attention to. Then it's always important because you have 3, 4 characters, then you will spread them out and then you jump between them to affect and to play and to attack on every piece of the map, because that's also important. That's an important part of the Warriors game. And Age of Calamity improves that, in my opinion, because each map, they are very different now. They aren't those blocky maps with square outposts and corridors that are in between them, and that's it. There are different levels and altitudes, and there's a huge path that you can take, and some you can take, and some you go from one place to the other, then you can go back. You are always thinking about how to travel between the map.
The maps are a lot more dynamic looking, just looking at the map, not even living in it, but actually looking at the shape of the maps. They don't look as boring. And then being in them, yes, they feel more like Zelda-y, like, well, let me see if I go this way. You know, if you actually, sometimes I get stuck when I play these games and I end up watching my little arrow. Do you guys do that? You watch a little arrow instead of actually looking at what's ahead of me. And if you actually look, you'll find little secrets like Nathan was talking about, and you'll find little hidey holes and little side roads. They may be shown on the map, but maybe they're a little smaller and stuff. And so it's trying to, it takes me out of my usual Warriors game funk, I guess.
Really reminded me of, have you played Dragon Quest 11?
Yes.
No.
I've played 7 and 9. No, I haven't. Oh, wait, is that, no.
It doesn't
9.
matter. So Dragon Quest 11.
That's the new one on Switch?
Yeah.
Oh, I've played that, yeah.
So on the map, it's like this big field, and then you'll see kind of like a small cave off in the distance.
Yeah.
Or you'll see like a rise somewhere, and you're like, well, obviously something's there, because otherwise they wouldn't have put that into the map. So the more I look at the maps, the levels here, I'm like, well, that's obviously something I should go look at, because it's very obvious in the map. But it's always pretty rewarding, and like it's so fun cutting through enemies to get there. It's like these are huge levels that are fun to explore and find secrets in, as opposed to corridors or one big line to the next outpost that was the original Hyrule Warriors. The original Hyrule Warriors map felt like literally just lines connecting the outposts.
Yes.
Absolutely, it did.
So let's talk about characters, because I think it's no secret that you get to play with a lot of characters in this game. We've got Link, Zelda, Impa. So has anyone? I know some people are only a little bit way into the game, but has anyone got a kind of favorite character yet? Is any a favorite character emerging for anyone that they love to play with, or is everyone just sticking with Link?
Urbosa, 100%.
Yeah.
Urbosa is so satisfying. She's
very stylish.
It's like she's dancing when fighting.
Yes.
And then going with the sweet snap and thundering the enemies.
It's so stylish. She's got kind of, I like the way that Link's sword play feels in this game. And I think if I were to expand on the point from earlier, I think the sword play in this game is better, whereas the combat in Breath of the Wild is better because combat's a puzzle.
That's fair.
That makes sense.
Here, the actual sword play is better. Urbosa feels like Link's sword play, but better and with more style. And the lightning charge and using those and stuff, like, it just feels incredible. She's a great character. I love everything about just watching her just move around and attack enemies. She's easily my favorite so far.
I really enjoy Zelda. I really like the Sheikah Slate powers. Feels really inventive and fun. Hopefully they'll carry that across to Breath of the Wild 2, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, I really like her powers. But what feels like, I think of a couple of other outlets have kind of touched on this, but what feels like a bit of a disconnect is that she's in the cutscene. She's really meek. Oh, I don't know if I can use my powers. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should go into battle. And then suddenly she's like swinging around like runes, with magnesis and all this kind of stuff, and taking out like 300 enemies. And then suddenly in the next cutscene, she's back to being quite a meek princess.
Yeah, I hate to be picky. I hate to be picky, but that is the one thing that bothers me. Is like the hordes of enemies and the fact that Zelda fights are like things that just aren't addressed in Breath of the Wild, because this wasn't an idea when Breath of the Wild was conceived. And so it's a little bit, you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit.
Yeah, I think that in the original Hyrule Warriors, the attacks, much as they were kind of personalized, it really could have been anyone, and they were just putting in like Zelda character and Zelda character. Like, what's the bug girl from Twilight Princess? Agatha? Is that her name? Like, what's the bug girl from Twilight Princess doing mowing down enemies? Like, it just got to a point where you're like, this really could be anyone at this point. This feels mad.
Yeah.
I think Zelda is the maybe if only, and maybe at least the most obvious example of that DNA from the previous Hyrule Warriors games, where like, this character's just here and they're gonna fight. Like, just go with it. Whereas everyone else does feel like a part of a Zelda game that is a Warriors game. You know, everyone else seems thought out. I mean, it does feel really silly, but I do love just watching her like lift up the bombs and the magnesis, and like she's got the walking bomb and stuff, and you take a picture as the special attack as well. Like, she feels very silly, and I love that.
Yeah.
Everything, like you said, it feels unique. It doesn't feel like anybody could be that character. You can't just stick anybody in their skin and it would look like them. You'd be like, that doesn't look like something they would do. Like, for example, my favorite to play as is Impa so far, like in the demo, and I love playing as Impa like that because it's so fun to like. It's hard, first of all. Playing as Impa is not easy, like effectively, but when you get it right and you're just like this army of ninjas, it feels like amazing. Like, I don't know, I love it. It's the most satisfying for me so far. But I'm sure, I'll have a bunch of favorites. And I feel like that would be weird for any other character. Like, everyone's abilities feel very much them, very unique. And yeah, some of them are more difficult than others. They're just different, have different effects and different skill levels.
It's nice to see Impa given character that she wasn't afforded in Breath of the Wild, but just because of this being a prequel and necessarily a young woman, but it's nice to see kind of the Sheikah in action, whereas they're kind of this legend in Breath of the Wild. Other than like the guards and stuff, like it's just the Yiga clan that remain now. So I think the only Sheikah we see are literally those two guards outside of Impa's house, I think. So like, getting to see them at their best, is in the way that Impa is here is really fun.
It just remind me, because I haven't played it for ages, but in Breath of the Wild, did they have voice actors for each of the characters, or was it just blocks of text? They did. Because I completely forgot about that. So I was like, it's really nice to hear their voices for once. But I was like, actually,
it was some parts of the game had dialogue and some have voice.
The memories and the cutscenes, the few that were, they have voices there.
I think you can be forgiven for forgetting that, because there wasn't a lot. And Breath of the Wild is my personal best game ever made. The story and voice acting were not great. I personally, that is the only flaw I can really point to that game. But
not a fan of Zelda's voice. I hate no shade on the actor. No shade on the actor. Just
Patricia Somerset, she's wonderful.
Doesn't sound like Zelda to me.
So what I think was the problem with Breath of the Wild that this game fixes is voice direction. I think there may have been a couple of swaps. I'm not entirely certain. There definitely is a lot of returning cast. I think everyone seems more confident, whether it's been afforded by the amount of time they now have with these characters, because this is way more story. So they've obviously had, instead of a few lines in Breath of the Wild, they've had a few pages here. They can really go like, okay, if I'm Daruk, I'm this really big, bombastic, funny guy. So they've obviously had a lot more fun with these characters, I think.
Yes.
But the voice acting and the story here are so much better than Breath of the Wild. Maybe it won't be as impactful. We won't go into too much story here, which would be a bit of a shame, because in terms of sheer direction and the cutscenes and stuff, this is leagues above Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I love watching the cutscenes. It feels like there's so much story. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, you had those memories, and that was pretty much it. It's great to kind of every kind of battle is kind of broken up by these great cutscenes that you just are just so much like fun to watch. But let's talk about story for a while, because before the game came out, we were kind of talking about how it's a full-on prequel to Breath of the Wild. But we know where the story's going. We know it's going to end with Ganondorf Re an Awakening and taking over, and there's going to be 100 years of darkness. But from the very first cutscene of this game, it's in the demo, but it kind of sets out that this is not what you think it is. This isn't a strict prequel to Breath of the Wild.
No, sir.
Yeah.
It's probably a new branch in the Zelda timeline if we're considering it canon. So that's exciting, I think. Playing with time travel is a little messy, but we'll get there.
I love the idea of like a Zelda timeline in a few years, and where one split is like hero child wins, hero child fails. This one's going to be egg boy goes back. Like,
Yeah.
That's oh god.
John, you've got the
Yeah.
furthest, haven't you? I want to know,
I've-
like, how, without spoiling it, does it still feel consequential?
Yeah, it actually does, because I don't know. I've seen lots of people being kind of angry, or at least sad, because it is not exactly what they were promised for, because there will be changes and there are different things. But from the very beginning, we already start to see things that are different than the memories and the lore and background that we have seen in Breath of the Wild. But it's different in a way that you still feel the whole danger and the perils and problems that are going to happen, and up to the point where I am now, and without spoiling the things, the things aren't like, oh, now it's a completely different things than we have had a story that goes like A to B, and now it's A to Z. It's not that. It's still going A to B, but with few small different things happening here and there that makes me more curious, in fact, for what's coming next, because I see something that's different, but it's not a different thing that, okay, now it's everything different, and now they kind of erased everything that happened in Breath of the Wild. No, that's something that they are building with this narrative, and they are going to maybe a little bit different outcome. I don't know yet, but even if it's a little bit different, it won't be like, or at least I feel like it won't be in a way that, oh, now they were able to defeat the Calamity Ganon, and it's a completely different Hyrule where everything went well, and the characters who passed away are alive, or other characters that continues are gone. And I don't know, it's not that different and unconsequential, at least for now.
I think that is absolutely what I wanted to hear, because to me, that is the difference between a Solo or a Rogue One. Solo was a prequel where we knew everything and it was boring because nothing was filled in that didn't already didn't already get told to us in other forms. Whereas Rogue One told us a story by introducing so much new that there was a danger. Like that was my worry. This was just going to be like, I didn't need this told to me any more than I already knew.
Yes.
I have strong opinions about those movies, but I'll let
This is a
It's
Nintendo
not-
podcast.
Yep, exactly. Not relevant. Not relevant.
We'll start a Star Wars podcast next week.
I just hope this game is a lot better than Rogue One. That's all I'll say.
Ooh, ouch.
All right, we are chatting afterwards.
And
Yeah,
well,
I kind of. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Just to complete that narrative beat, what I would say is that even with what they have shown, I think, I hope we have a moment in the future where we can talk free spoilers and then discuss these things. But even with the few things that they are doing and they are showing, I think they are probably getting lots of new elements or new things that maybe won't change what we have seen in Breath of the Wild, but maybe will be used in Breath of the Wild 2. Because even enemies and new types of enemies that they have introduced in Age of Calamity, they can come with interesting twists that they can use again, like they have shown it in the launch trailer. But there are elemental enemies, like elemental moblins, for instance. And we had no type of enemy like that in Breath of the Wild. The elemental enemies were Wizardrobes, and then there's the Choo-Choo jellies and that, and only those enemies have elemental. Other enemies had just the color variation, the blue, black, silver, gold, and so on. And then it's a thing that maybe they had it here, because in Breath of the Wild 2, we will see these kind of enemies appearing, or other little different things that they are showing in Age of Calamity can appear again in Breath of the Wild 2, like the clothed wizard that we see in the trailers and on the demo. Maybe he will have a different importance in Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah, that's true, because in the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, you can see the malice kind of like spreading out and like consuming a rat and stuff like that. So maybe that is a hint at what we are going to be facing in Breath of the Wild 2. Interesting stuff.
I hope so. It's a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, I think they. I still think Breath of the Wild 2 is sooner than some people think, but I do think it's really good that they've held out any info on this until we get a chance to play this game. And I really hope you're right that this does inform, through new enemies or new playstyles, kind of what changes in Breath of the Wild 2. Because the Zelda games take so long to plan and create. They took 3 years making a physics system. So they've known what Breath of the Wild 2 was, probably since before they finished the DLC for Breath of the Wild. So I've got no doubt that when Koei Tecmo came to them with the idea for this, or vice versa, they let them know everything that was going to be in Breath of the Wild 2 and gave them puzzle pieces that would interact with each other. I'm absolutely certain that we're going to be fed some kind of Easter eggs and some very interesting tidbits that we'll eventually look back at one day, one lovely day, and be like, oh, cool.
Yes, it's going to be something you won't notice the first playthrough, but you'll notice after you play Breath of the Wild 2 and you go back to this game and you go, oh my God, this was a reference to this that happened.
Some Zelda theorist on YouTube is going to have it an hour later. Don't worry.
Yeah, they're laying the groundwork for something, aren't they?
Can't wait.
So I definitely think this time travel, alternate timelines, probably the best way to go, because like we said, if it was like a solo where it's almost just like a checkpoint, like ticking off everything that we know is going to happen, it'd be a very boring story and wouldn't be that interesting to play. Like we said, no consequences. You know it's all going to end in the Age of Calamity, basically. So I was kind of musing to Anna and Nathan on Slack. I thought maybe, I don't know if this is true, but maybe it could be there's 2 different endings. So depending on how you play, how well you do, if you don't play as well, maybe it leads directly into Breath of the Wild. But maybe if you play amazingly and you kind of beat the game really well, it goes off into an alternate timeline. So you've got 2 different endings. So that's how it could end, maybe.
If you can use the power of Egg Boy, hold him up, fire his beam. I feel like he's gonna have to be involved in the end somehow. He's been made so prominent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he's the crux of the story, really. I mean, the entire any storyteller hopefully would, if it starts with Egg Boy, it has to end with Egg Boy.
100%. I want a BB-8 style remote control Egg Boy.
Why else would they have that? They're gonna go, well, I want this to revolve around this. Okay, whatever mechanism you use for time travel, just make it cute and marketable.
Yeah.
100%.
That's all they did. That's all they said.
This is the
I
Baby
really-
Yoda style MacGuffin, isn't it? That, like,
Yeah.
Going back to Star Wars.
yeah. Just make it merchandisable. Just make
Yes,
like, just let
whatever
us
you
sell
do.
it.
Where's
they-
the Egg Boy amiibo? Is
That's
what
what I
Yeah.
was going to say. Yeah.
I
Maybe for
think-
Breath of the Wild 2.
I think it maybe got disrupted. We'll probably get one next year. Maybe
Yeah.
not next year, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were planned to get one and it got disrupted a bit.
Would not be surprised at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can kind of like connect it to Breath of the Wild 2 and rewind time.
You're gonna
Maybe.
need amiibos for a lot of these characters and their young Calamity, Age of Calamity
Exactly, yeah.
forms.
It's definitely coming. All that stuff's
We haven't
definitely coming.
scanned any amiibo yet. What do they do?
I'm
Ooh.
scared about.
You
I'm
can
scared.
get,
Sorry.
it's random stuff that you get, like weapons, depending on the amiibo, and or materials, monster drops, this kind of thing. But I don't think there is anything exclusive or unique
Okay.
to the amiibo like you have in Breath of the Wild,
Yeah.
depending on the Zelda amiibos you use.
Like how you could only get Epona if you had a certain amiibo, which was
Yes, the
Bre-
link with
Breath
the
of the Wild's my
horse.
favorite game ever. That was a scummy move. Yeah, because I've got every Zelda amiibo other than maybe a couple. So I don't know if there's a daily limit or anything, but I'm super excited just to see what I can
Yes, you
Now
can
I've got-
use 5 for day.
get. Okay. 'cause
I've,
now
I've
got
never
far enough,
had
I
an
wanna start piling
amiibo.
up. What? Not even
Yeah,
one?
Yeah.
They're too expensive. I feel like if I had one, I would need more, and then I gotta put them somewhere, and I just didn't get them.
I
But
wish
Float.
I'd had that mindset 4 years ago.
you know, if anyone wants
Too
to get
late
me
now.
something for Hanukkah,
Do you want the giant Detective Pikachu one?
I'll have the most obscure, weird, rare ones. Sure. The what's the cube one?
QB.
Cubey. I'll take that one.
Yeah, there is a QB one. There's a Chibi Robo one, and there's a Pikmin one specifically for Hey Pikmin that's just the Pikmin as well.
They're every single one is on display at Nintendo New York, so I love gawking at the rare ones. But like in earnestness, if I were to buy them, if you're like an amiibo collector going, what do non-amiibo collectors dream about? I think the first ones I would get, because I don't really play Smash. If I did, I'd probably get Smash character ones. I probably would want the Breath of the Wild ones. Because I'm a huge Zelda fan, and I would want all the stuff, the goodies that I haven't been able to get because for the aforementioned reasons. So.
The champion amiibo as well are some of the best.
They're
Especially
pretty.
Darux is incredible.
Yeah. I haven't played Persona 5 because I don't have a PlayStation, but
I've got
boy, I love the Joker amiibo and I love the Hero
Yeah.
amiibo. They're like
I'm-
two of the prettiest ones yet,
I'm
and I'd
scared
love to
I'm
own
holding it
those.
now and I want to go grab them, but that's
Yeah.
not what we're doing today. This is not an amiibo special.
Sorry, I'm just
We'll
like
do that
I
later.
figured.
I'm just
I
excited.
figured very few people are in my shoes because a lot of people own at least one. But no, these things behind me are paper crafts, not amiibos.
I was very close to getting it because I haven't got any amiibo either. I was very close to getting the Link's Awakening one, the very like toyetic one. But yeah,
That's
I think
so
it was
cute.
just sold out everywhere. So I
I've
was like,
got
oh, well.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. You took the last one probably. Right, let's talk about the graphics because there was with the game when everyone was playing the demos, there was some concerns about the frame rate. It seems like that's kind of been rectified a little bit, but I think it's still a little bit rough. There's a little bit like clipping, texture popping. I found it most noticeable when you're kind of doing special attacks. It's often hard to see what you're doing because characters are just in the way, like walking through you.
Yeah.
Has anyone else had like
Yeah.
a few issues with like the graphics?
I think not the graphics. I think its biggest enemy is the camera. I think you're right. There is clipping and stuff.
The
and
camera.
this game has got a really good soft focus. Like unlike Breath of the Wild, when you zoom in on certain enemies and do certain attacks, enemies and the background become in and out of focus in a really satisfying way. But the camera seems to swing around wildly, and sometimes things come in and out of focus that shouldn't. So it hasn't been an issue because by the time this has happened, I've already triggered an attack that is just happening. So I've pressed X enough times. I'm just sat back and looking at it and going, "This is cool." But but visually, if you were to nitpick and break it down, I think just the camera is kind of a bit wild in this. It's zooming into small corridors and through walls that maybe it's not good enough to deal with in a very in a very Nintendo way. Whereas Nintendo cameras nowadays generally absolutely cracking.
And for like a Zelda-y game, it still doesn't feel very intuitive to press right stick for me to target stuff. It just doesn't.
Yeah,
As much as I
L trigger or
practice it,
something.
that's what I always want to do, because that's like the triggers and stuff is what my brain wants to do always, to target stuff.
Do you know what I hate? When you go to fire the arrows and you have to aim with the left analog stick?
Yeah.
The arrows I can never get right.
I've never aimed with the left analog stick in my life. That's how you move characters. What are they doing? No one's ever done that before. Why have they just gone, actually, I think everyone in every game ever was wrong, and this is going to be really intuitive. You're not. This is bad.
Yeah, I think the camera problems, it gets worse depending on the character you are using, because if you have played with Rivali, he has his special movement is to fly airborne, and then he can fly around the map, and he has a different moveset in the air than what he has when he's in the ground. But due to the fact that you are up in the air, the camera can get really problematic, because it gets in between yourself and then the characters that are on the bottom of the screen, which gets even worse when you are on a smaller map, or if you are on a corridor, a map that is closed, that has walls around you. And of course, like Daruk, he's bigger than other characters, then his camera is a little moved away, and it gets even more problematic depending on if you're right to a wall and if you are targeting an enemy. And enemies will also affect the camera. Like there are boss-like enemies like Hinox and Linos and such things, and they also affect the camera. So you kind of need to jungle around the camera lots of times. Like I'm going for a flurry rush, then you are going to be locked into an enemy until the movement is over. And while you are that, the camera can go wild at times. It's a bit weird, but I don't think the game is demanding enough in a point that, or a split second error like that will make you lose a fight and then you die. No, I think it's a kind of minor nuisance that happens from time to time. Like you dash to the side and then it's gone. But then there was that split second time with the camera going all crazy around you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the action is so frenetic that it's only when people look through footage and you really nitpick it that you could be like if I break this down frame by frame, yeah, there is some issues, but so much is happening and I'm moving so immediately from space to space that it's not bothering me in the least. Much as I can look at it and I've noticed it, especially with the frame rate drops, exactly the same. I technically can look at it and point it out. Hasn't bothered me in any way at all, especially the frame rate. I think the worst example of the frame rate was the very first level, which I think, I don't know if it was Digital Foundry or someone went into and were like, it's probably the grass. There's so much grass in the first level. And that, as well as the amount of enemies, was causing a lot of kind of CPU issues where they were like, whoa, there's a lot of things going on here. Whereas now when you're in, like places like Gerudo Village and stuff, they don't have to do that. So I've seen noticeable frame rate improvements. I'm sure one day this game is going to look really good on a Switch Pro as well. So that'll be gone. And the camera, it's literally, I've spotted it, but not once have I cared.
Yeah, like you say, it's a minor inconvenience, isn't it? Like I think, especially if I think at times when I'm very close to a wall, triggered a special attack, then it seems like the camera just throws it at a random angle, and you have to quickly, reset and kind of like get your bearings again. But like you say, it's not like game ending where you're like, I can't deal with this. It's just a minor inconvenience.
So it's surely noticeable, but I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because the camera can be problematic at times, but when it's working, it's so good to help you with that powerful feelings, because the camera moves around and then shows you on a finishing movie using the powerful attack from an angle that makes it all more cinematic. And then when it's working, it's so fantastic and so good. The combat feeling from time to time, it's amazing on this game, even with these little problems here and there.
Yeah, a lot of the finishers are so stylish. Like when Urbosa does the click of electricity and the camera's
Yeah.
in front of her looking back, and the confidence of her looking at the camera and stuff. Like they've designed everything with an eye for flair, with a flourish. And yeah, these inconsistencies are just somewhere in between. I think the one place where the frame rate drop was really obvious is, and this is in the trailers, was piloting the divine beasts, which is kind of understandable because you're this massive thing and there's even more enemies on the map because you're so big. Like, you know, I was doing the not Varnaboris, what's the one that Daruk has, the giant salamander?
It starts with an R.
Redania.
Redania.
Yeah, that one. I was watching the little KO count in the corner, and it was going up to like 2,000, and I was like, "Oh wow, I've really slayed some people." But that was so slow and cumbersome anyway that it didn't bother me. Like, this isn't Bayonetta or Dead or Alive or something that demands 60 frames. You know, this is. I nearly said mindless again. It's not a mindless game. It's way more action focused and engaging, but it's not as it's not precise like those games can be. So it doesn't need to be precise.
Yeah.
And what is it like? Because I haven't got to these sections yet, but what is it like controlling a divine beast? Are those sections actually fun, or is it something you just have to kind of get through to get to the next level? Because I'm quite interested. It seems from some of the footage, it seems a bit like like you say, slow and cumbersome, and a bit not that much fun. So I was just really interested to see what you thought.
I'd say they are simplistic because it varies depending on the divine beast you are using, because they each one has its own map with a different layout and things like that. And some of these divine beast levels, they are kind of a corridor where you go from point A to B, defeating enemies, and then you have your cooldowns for your special skills that you can use from time to time. And these more simplistic ones, it's the first one, the two first ones you will play, they are like that. They are kind of just there. They aren't difficult. They aren't that amazing. There's not a lot you can actually do on this level. It's more like a corridor shooter. You are on a trail almost. You need to go from point A to B, shooting things, and that's it. But then there are other levels that are much more elaborated, because you can actually walk around the map and turn around your divine beasts and fly around and move your camera. And those are more appealing, surely. But they are still this kind of it's a kind of different flavor to the gameplay. Like each 10 missions, you will have this different mission where you will slay thousands of enemies in a different way, and you will feel amazing because the divine beasts are so powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Like I've only done the one so far, so I've only done Varadunia. However that's how you say him. But like, yeah, it just feels very slow and deliberate. You can still lose, as I found out. Because I think I was being a bit sloppy because I thought it was more boring than it was. Whereas actually, when I was paying attention, I had to start looking at the map and where enemies were, and I had to genuinely start figuring it out. But it is much slower. It's possibly not as fun as regular gameplay, but as a change of pace and just as a spectacle, it's awesome. Like, I don't think it can be overstated that playing as these characters and enjoying these segments in that way is like wish fulfillment. That's such a cool moment. And that is the perfect sort of Zelda fan service in my eyes. You know, I think all of us looked at the original Breath of the Wild and was like, what if we piloted those? And like, it's, you know, it's taken a few years, and it's maybe not how we imagined it, but this is a really cool way to do that, and giving you thousands of enemies to plow through whilst you were controlling these huge hungering beasts is a really fun way to do it. I'm glad it doesn't outstay its welcome. If it was any longer than it was, I think I would get more bored.
I was worried about that, but I'm glad it's not so far doing that.
I guess if they admitted that, if they just like completely didn't have those levels and were like, no, you don't pilot the divine beast, there'll be uproar. Everyone would be like, I've been waiting for so long to pilot these. Please give me a chance.
You're telling me there's a game where I can slaughter enemies by the hundreds and I can't be a divine beast?
Yeah,
no, but at the same time, it's one of those things, like you said, Nathan, it's a spectacle. Let's see it. Let's enjoy it. It's so sweet. And just like dessert, you don't want too much. Let's just have it and move on, and then have more meat and potatoes and more dessert later, and maybe do that 4 times.
I don't know yet, but I imagine so.
Unless there's a 5th special divine beast that was never mentioned before. Who knows?
Well, there is a 5th divine beast in the DLC.
Oh, of course. Maybe a 6th. Who knows? So it all sounds pretty. We've all had very glowing things to say about this game. It seems like everyone's very happy that they've played it and bought it. Are there anything's lacking for you that you or maybe you wish they would have done differently in the game, or do you think they've done the best with what they had, and you know it's near perfect?
I think from the gameplay perspective and the combat and the characters, it's all perfect. It's everything I was wanting from this game, and I was very hyped for it. So it's good that it is delivering what I wanted. I think there's only a very minor thing, because I think this is the best Warriors game I have ever played. But there's only one thing that they did specifically on the Fire Emblem Warriors series, that it was due to how they used some mechanics from the Fire Emblem, like the weapon triangle, where sword is better than axe, and so
lance.
on.
It's lance, sword, and
sword.
Lance, sword, axe. Due to that, you could send your companions, like you have 4 characters on a map, and you send your companions to different outposts. And if you used the triangle correctly, you could send your friends to an outpost, and the computer itself, the artificial intelligence, would be able to take that outpost for you while you were fighting on another side of the map. And in Age of Calamity, I feel that they didn't use anything like that, because you can send your characters to different places, but until you are controlling them, they will just stand there on that outpost fighting or pretending to fight with your enemies, and you need to control them in order to do that. And that was a nice thing that Fire Emblem Warriors had, that you would micromanagement of the entire map, like sending people everywhere, and the people would be meaningful while you were attacking a more important place on the map. That's something that would be nice to have on Age of Calamity. But on the other hand, Age of Calamity is so much more focused on you controlling these characters and being awesome, fighting with the champions, that it's something that you won't really feel like it's a missing point, unless you have played other games like other Musos, and then you have that to compare with Age of Calamity. But other than that, I think it's fantastic. I'm loving it.
I think to that point, what Fire Emblem Warriors really made you do there was play as different characters and try different things out. Whereas I find myself already in Age of Calamity moving towards my favorite characters to control, which is something that I think I'm probably going to stick with. I'm probably going to just go into missions, go like, I like this person. I might only level up this person or focus on the weapons for this person. Whereas Fire Emblem Warriors, it made sense because you had to manage so much of the map, and there was a difference between the characters, and there was consequence to the difference. It made sense to have a team that all worked together.
Right.
Which
Yes.
here I do think that is maybe something they've stepped back a bit.
Yeah, Jonathan, I was going to ask, like, do you have to level up everyone, or does it not really matter? You can, like Nave said, you can choose your favorite characters and just kind of like go like build them up and leave the rest in the dust.
No, you can really focus on certain characters if you wish. There will be certain maps and scenarios where you need to use specific characters, but if you end up leveling one character to level like 60 and the others are 20, you have an option that you unlocks through the narrative that you can pay rupees to train that character and level up without the grinding and without spending thousands of hours fighting yourself, which is cool because you can just play as you wish. I personally, I am trying to play with every character and leveling every character because there's the weapons that you need to fuse to make them stronger too. So I get I like these kind of things when everywhere is getting stronger together and so on. But it's up to the player. The game really gives the tools for any play style. If you need to focus on, if you want to play with every character, it's up to the player.
I didn't know that, and I'm really happy that's a thing there, because that's one of my favorite things with like the EXP share in Pokemon is don't make me have to grind up a smaller character if I don't want to.
Yes.
Give me options. That works really well. I think one of the issues I have so far that I don't know how much it might change is this is very strictly, and I think maybe Koei Tecmo were given the keys by Nintendo, but also told like, you can do this much and that is it. Because this is a Breath of the Wild game, 100%, but I think almost to a fault. So all I've unlocked so far with Link's outfits are outfits from Breath of the Wild. I also can't unlock outfits for any other character, apparently. No other character can wear different outfits, which is also annoying because I'm controlling them this time. So I would like to see, and we've seen it with a couple of enemies. We've seen kind of experimentation with elemental enemies and obviously the robed Gerudo, who I have no idea who they are yet. So I know that there is a very strict kind of set of toys that they've been given access to play with, but I would have liked to have seen maybe a tiny bit more experimentation. Like, you know, we like the Sheikah outfit that we see those guards wearing by Impa. Link never wears that in Breath of the Wild. So even if it is, this has to be Breath of the Wild, something like that could be worn. You know, something a little still in the same universe and the same world very explicitly, but still something a bit different. I would have liked to
Well,
see.
different.
Yeah, because like so far I've unlocked the cold resistant trousers that you get when you go to see Rivali and the heat resistant top from Daruk. And that's cool, but there's only so many times I can go, oh, that's for Breath of the Wild before I get bored.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I have like a minor grumble. This like I just seem to be coming up against a lot of like invisible walls. So I don't know if it's because like you say it's so faithful to Breath of the Wild that because in Breath of the Wild you can climb anything, jump off anything. Sometimes when you're on structures and you think, oh, I can just jump off and attack that enemy, you can't. You can't actually physically do it. So that's sometimes a little bit jarring when you're like, because it's so close to Breath of the Wild, you think you can do the same
Yes.
things, but you can't.
Yeah,
But that's only
that's
a
an
minor
interesting
kind of thing.
note.
Yeah, when I went around to I was on the Gerudo village earlier, and
Yeah.
I went round to the east of the map, around the corner, and I was on a higher platform, and I was looking down, and I saw one of the Korok balloons, the ones that in Breath of the Wild you pop with an arrow. So I was like, okay, what I'll do is I was playing as Urbosa. I was like, I'll send Link round, and then I'll use the arrows as Link to pop this balloon. because even though the platforms were next to each other, I was like, I guess I can't jump down because this isn't Breath of the Wild. So maybe I have to shoot it. So I got Link, and after playing for a little while, sent Link all the way around, got Link there. And then I was like, okay, Link, shoot your arrow at this balloon, which isn't technically on the level I'm on, which is on another part of this map, but I can see it almost a meter away.
Did it not work?
And it did not work. No, because this is not Breath of the Wild. And that was one of the biggest moments of like, I'm not playing that game.
I would be really annoyed.
Which, again, Breath of the Wild broke video games for a lot of people. It's an anomaly. But it's astounding that anybody ever made a game like that. And it made me, games that have come out since, like the Assassin's Creed games, like Red Dead Redemption and other things, I've picked up and just gone, no. Like I had the unfortunate problem of playing Horizon Zero Dawn right after I played Breath of the Wild. And I was like, this is bad. And it's not a bad game by any means. It's a technical achievement. It's incredible. But compared to Breath of the Wild and the sheer amount of things you can do, it is ridiculous to expect any other game to do that much, because they went above and beyond in so many ways. So I don't begrudge this game for not being able to do the things that Breath of the Wild can, because that game's mad. But it was jarring playing a Breath of the Wild game, with like inverted commas for anybody that couldn't see that. But I was being restricted in a way that I wasn't used to.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
So true.
It will depend a lot of your point of view from this game, if you will love it a lot or if you get a bit disappointed with it. Because if you come to this game and see it as a Warriors game or a Hyrule Warriors that take things from Breath of the Wild, then you will probably love it, because it does have lots of Breath of the Wild stuff everywhere. But if you come to this game like, I've played Breath of the Wild and I want a prequel of Breath of the Wild from the story to gameplay, then you will need to adjust your expectations accordingly.
I think that's a perfect description.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like the nice way he said it too. You'll need to adjust your expectations accordingly. Like that, I would sound bitchy. I would sound bitchy saying that. Pardon my French. You can bleep me or something. John said it so nicely. He's like, listen, all right, just calm down there. All right, it ain't happening, Captain.
But again, it is ridiculous to expect any other game to achieve what Breath of the Wild did.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very hard. I guess it's always going to happen, but it's always going to be compared to Breath of the Wild, and it's hard to like live up to those expectations.
And it doesn't try to. I mean, it's just trying to be faithful.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey got compared to Breath of the Wild when people were like, "Oh, well, you can kind of climb stuff, but not like this and that." Like, I think a game that is Age of Calamity, a Breath of the Wild prequel, is going to draw comparison. So it is right to really lay down to people like, this is a Hyrule Warriors game first that has stepped up. Don't look at it as a Breath of the Wild game scaled back, because that's not fair on what this game is. Not
at all. They're completely different styles of games.
Yeah.
And I'm personally not a big fan of like fighting games, and I have played Warriors games before on people's recommendations, and because one of them ended up getting a Zelda skin when I had a Wii U, I was like, this is like an obvious purchase for me. But no, I think even if you don't like this genre and you're more into the Zelda genre, again, I would tell people like that to consider this in terms of at least try the demo, because it's a lot of content in the demo. You will learn things that you will be glad you knew, and that you'll be glad you experienced before maybe hearing it through someone else. It's definitely worth it for all the faults, for the, we talked about the camera, we talked about some minor frustrations. They're nuisances compared to the pluses.
I definitely think if you love Breath of the Wild, if you're a Zelda fan, you have to play this game. There's no other way about it, really.
Yeah. All comes back to that.
Like, I think if you tried the demo and you were absolutely not sold, maybe watch the cutscenes on YouTube. I never begrudge anybody who wants to catch up on a series. Just if that's what you need to do, then do it. But like, I completely agree. I think this game is best told through the way you play it, and I like the way it's telling that story through gameplay.
Yeah, it makes you feel culpable for everyone's actions and every consequence. That's kind of the point of playing a game. I mean, more power to you if you just feel like you don't have time, you don't want to spend the money, whatever, you can watch the cutscenes. But at the end of the day, why do we play the game versus going on YouTube or maybe watching someone stream it before we played it for the first time? Well, because you can only play a game for the first time once. And there's that feeling of being a participant in the story. And you very much get that here.
Yeah, Jhonathan, would you say anything? What would you say to people who are maybe on the, again on the fence, maybe thinking, should I get it, should I not?
Well, I'd go with you guys with the fact that there's the demo, and the demo is great. The only problem of the demo is that first level with some frame rate issues that aren't present on the entire game. So that's not the exact experience that you got with the, I don't even know how many dozens of hours you will get with this game, because it's huge. I have 20 hours so far, and I don't think I'm even on the half of it. So if you want lots of content, if you want more of the Breath of the Wild universe, of the lore, of the characters, if you want to know more, even if it's not exactly what you got with the first Breath of the Wild, it's not exactly like what we talked in a previous podcast. It's not the memories of Breath of the Wild with more things in between them. It's those characters, it's that time, but with new stuff that will probably get you curious and interested in what's to come. And one thing that I'm sure to talk about is this game has lots of cool surprises, because even the characters that you are going to unlock, and I only unlocked a few additionals in addition to the champions and the characters that we already know, they are bonkers. They are different. They are not what you would expect, and they play in different ways. Each one is unique, and each one is fantastic. And I myself, I am really looking forward to see what other characters are going to be there, and the rest of the narrative that I am really into to discover more about.
So exciting.
Me and you were keeping a pretty close eye on possible playable characters, John. So the fact that you've said that you're surprised, even given what me and you kind of assumed, gives me a lot of confidence.
Yes, it's pretty cool, because it's so different from what you'd expected, and they play so different than what you would expected. And I'm not going to spoil it to anyone.
It makes me excited to play more of it. I need to go and play it straight after this.
I know, it's so hard. You're making me want to just drop the money on it.
Do it.
Oh, I can't. It's the holidays. I have other things. Oh, don't make me do it. Don't make me do it.
I feel like a lot of people.
It's already in my Amazon cart.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are going to be playing this over Christmas. This is going to be everyone who's got a Switch at Christmas is going to be playing.
Yeah,
I think.
Probably.
As much as there is a really good story here, and I want people to pay attention to it, I think this is a good play handheld whilst being in a room with your family game. Like you can kind of take a step back. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of take a step back. I think this would be a good holiday game. Hey, maybe it ends up in Nintendo's Black Friday sale.
Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Please. Right. Well, that please. That just about wraps it up for our Age of Calamity special. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And all that's left for me to say is, Nathan, Anna, Jhonathan, thank you so much for coming on, chatting about the game.
Thank you.
It's
always fun to be here.
I'm excited to just get back to it. I can see it on my TV right now.
I think after this, everyone apart from Anna is going to go play Age of Calamity.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Right, we'll be back for another episode next week when we'll be talking everything that's just happened in Nintendo Land with our new guest, Jesse Vitelli from Prima Games. So we hope you join us then. But until then, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.